Good afternoon, everyone. So great to be with you. Thank you for joining us today for the Cultures of Excellence webinar on energy at work and how to sleep well. We've got a whole bunch of people registered today, and I can see lots of you are just joining us as we speak. So we'll take a couple of minutes just to attend to some housekeeping while we wait for everybody to get online. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. I would love to hear where you are. So throw in the question box for me. Where are you joining us from today? And are you alone or are you sitting in a group? I know that many of you sit in boardrooms at lunchtimes to watch these webinars. So I'd love to hear where you're dialing in from and who is with you. All right, now, of course, today we are here to be talking about how to sleep well. Hi, Gary. Hi, Kathy. Brisbane, Maryborough, Townsville, Cairns. Great. Oh, Melbourne. Okay, so we're all spread across the country. All right, so today we're here to talk about sleep. Here's some of the stuff we're going to cover today. We're joined by someone very special who I'm going to introduce you to shortly, but I just want to give you a rundown of what we will be covering. Now, we are recording the session today, so anyone who misses out on it will receive the recording, and it'll be available later for anyone who registers on this link. You guys will all automatically receive the recording probably sometime tomorrow. So the things we're going to cover off today: the importance of sleep. What are the sleep cycles? How does that whole thing work? What are the general sleep disturbance patterns and some of the symptoms of poor sleep? And then Sveti's top tips for sleeping. And of course, we'll leave you at the end with an invitation. So let's get into it. Bit of quick housekeeping for you. If it's your first time to a webinar, we are recording, as I just mentioned, so you will receive that automatically. Also, if you'd like to interact, so if you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to talk to us about during the session, please use the question box to type your comments in. So they scroll up my screen while we're moving through the presentation and I can see what you're saying. Now, a couple of quick tips. Those of you who are familiar with webinars with me will know of these tips, of course. You've made your time available for the next hour or so, which is fabulous, and we appreciate it. So I really just invite you to be present with us. Just try to switch off your Facebook, close the door over if you're in an office, turn your phone upside down if it's right in front of you, and maybe just try to switch off any email browsers or open other browsers on your desktop. They can sometimes prevent the system from working well. And then thirdly, I just encourage you to lean into the concepts we talk about today. Might be something you haven't heard before, or it might be stuff that you've heard lots of times before, but you haven't been practicing effectively. So the whole point of a learning opportunity like this sort of platform is to give you a chance to get a bit of a snapshot of information in a brief window of time. So please be with us, be focused, stay present, and try to just really think about application of these concepts in your life. And then, of course, largely, it's not what we talk about in the here and now that makes a difference, but what you do when you leave this webinar. And we've attached to this webinar both the general resilience tip sheet, which is always a good reminder, given that sleep is an important part of building resilience. We've also attached the 10 top tips for sleeping. So you're welcome to print that out, share it around, stick it up next to your bed if it's going to help you remember some of the concepts we talk about today. Let me just take a moment to introduce myself to you and let you know what brings me here to you today. My name is Kim Yabsley. I am, of course, a consultant from Stratcom, and we work with organisations who are either struggling with change or trying to develop themselves and their people to be future ready. Sometimes that can be about leadership development or culture change. Sometimes it's about teaching people core skills for culture. So they're things like resolving conflict, building emotional intelligence, communicating for outcomes. Overall, we are consultants, strategists, facilitators, and executive coaches. I, of course, am also the author of 2 books, 3 now, in fact, because we've just released the Resilience mini book on culture change, and you can see those here in front of you. And I live on the beautiful Gold Coast with my 2 children and my partner. Aside from being the founder of Stratcom and the author of the Cultures of Excellence books, I'm also the author of the framework, which you see in front of you. Now, this is our proven methodology for culture change. So this is what we use when we're supporting organisations and individuals through what we find to be the essential elements of a culture of excellence. So just by way of context, I wanted to just let you know where we're coming from. What you see on the left-hand side there, that is the 10 principles of excellence. That's our 10-step plan for individuals to develop insight, take action, and expand outcomes for themselves personally and or for their organisation or for themselves professionally. What you see over on the right there are the 5 core areas that we work with organisations around to make sure that they're addressing those kind of key themes or areas that cause real problems. Okay, so sleep is a key component of resilience. And why that's so important is what we've got a very special guest here today to talk about. So I am going to just share with you very briefly again the slide that shows us some of the value of resilience, and we can touch again on this later in the presentation if anyone has any questions. But what I'd like to do now is introduce to you our very special guest, Sveti. Sveti Williams is the author of Fix My Sleep, The Sleepy Sheep, The Droopy-Eyed Donkey Who Couldn't Sleep. She is also a delegate of the World Sleep Day. She's a member of the Australasian Sleep Association and Sleep Health Foundation. She's a renowned international sleepologist and she's a leading sleep advocate. So we are very lucky and privileged to have her with us today. She helps her clients to target the things that prevent them from sleeping well and then to find the right sort of behaviours that help to enhance sleep. So I'll hand straight over to you, Sveti. Give me 1 minute to do that. And we will let Sveti tell us a little bit more about herself. Sveti, over to you. Sorry, I just realised I had muted her. Okay, Sveti, over to you now.
Hi, Kim. Can you hear me? Hello? Yes, so
yes,
thanks
we
so
can hear you
much.
perfectly now. Sveti, take it away.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you guys today and being invited by Kim. So yeah, so let's begin our. Oh, I apologize. Let's begin our presentation. So first of all, let me ask you a question. What is sleep? How many of us actually know what is sleep? And you know, to be honest, not many know, not even scientists actually know why we humans develop the need for sleep. So sleep is very basically highly under-researched and under-known subject in our human development and our human biological structure. But what we do know, we know that sleep is a highly complex biological phenomenon, and it's actually a prerequisite for human and animal survival. Well, what is sleep? How is it made? Sleep is basically made up of 2 mechanisms. It's adenosine tank and circadian rhythm. So let's talk a little bit about adenosine. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter. Basically, it's produced in our cells. It's produced basically by our cells eating glucose, and the byproduct of that is adenosine. And adenosine travels through our blood to the brain, and it attaches itself to the adenosine receptors in the brain. So to make it very simple, imagine if you have the adenosine tank in your brain, and you're just filling it up with the adenosine molecules during the day for it to be full towards the night, so we can basically get that relaxation. Now another very important mechanism is actually circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is our internal body clock that regulates all of our daily and nightly cycles. All right, so sleep is basically made up of different cycles, and this is just what it technically looks like, typically looks like. So each cycle is made up, our night is made up about 5 different cycles, and each of which is different to one previously.
What I'll do, I will also launch the poll now, because we did want to ask you guys who has trouble sleeping and just get a feel for who's out there and whether you have significant issues sleeping. So just use the screen that's popping up in front of you now to answer the question for us, so that we can just get a feel for whether we have a lot of people who have difficulty sleeping or some people who only have a little bit of an issue here and there. We'll ask you what some of your habits are a little bit later, but just want to find out now who Who is with us and where are you coming from today? Okay, I'll close that down so that Sveti can keep talking.
Okay, thank you so much, Kim. All right, so yes, guys, keep answering the question and I'll continue with the presentation, but if you do have a question, please do ask. Alrighty, so yes, each cycle basically is made up of 90 minutes in adults and 60 minutes in children. So that's basically in the healthy individuals. All right, so this is what basically we're going through different phases in each cycle. These are what they look like. They're just, you know, our brain transitions from different brain waves, and this is what it simply looks like. And we spend a certain amount of time in each phase of each cycle. So simply put, each cycle we go through basically is made up of light sleep, slow sleep, which is our deep sleep, and REM sleep. We all heard about REM sleep and deep sleep. All right, so what really happens in each stage? Well, stage 1 is our light sleep, is when we basically transition from being awake to being into our deep sleep. We need to go for that light sleep. So we spend about 4 to 5% of that sleep, and where our brain kind of drifts into alpha brain waves, our muscles activity slows down, we get that occasional twitching. If you ever notice yourself or your partner twitching when they're falling asleep, they basically transition into that light sleep just before the deep sleep. So another stage of light sleep, we spend about 45 to 55% in this sleep. So basically our breathing pattern and heart rate is slowing down. Our body temperature and blood pressure is also lowering. So basically we are getting ready to enter that deep restorative sleep. And in stage 3, this is our deep sleep. We spend about 4 to 6% of our sleep in this stage. So this is where our deep sleep begins. And if you ever try to wake somebody up while during their deep sleep, you would find it difficult to waken them up. And this is simply because they are so deeply asleep. This is where our brain begins to generate delta waves. So stage 4 is, again, it's our deep sleep. We spend about 12 to 15% of sleep in this phase, and it's very deep sleep. So we've got that rhythmic breathing, limited muscle activity, and brain generates delta waves. So this is where we just stay asleep, and with that, we don't tend to dream so much in this stage. And the last stage is our rapid eye movement, or short is for REM. So we spend about 20 to 25% of sleep in this phase. This is where our dreaming occurs. This is where our brain waves speed up and dreaming occurs. And major muscles go through temporary paralysis, basically just so to prevent us from living our dreams. Basically, if we're dreaming of riding a horse, we don't just get up and go riding a horse, for example. And our heart rate and blood pressure increases, and breathing is rapid and is very shallow. But this is people's very favorite, could be favorite stage, because they experience those vivid dreaming. All right, so like I mentioned before, sleeping is a prerequisite for human and animal survival. It's very crucial for our function and even for our living. All right, well, let's see how poor sleep can correlate with different diseases. For example, when we don't get enough sleep, we're unable to lose weight, we have lower immune function, we have high blood pressure, increased depression, high levels of stress, low productivity. It could also happen organ failure, and occasionally you can die not from sleeping, but because your body is just shutting down from not sleeping for a very long time. All right, these are just some side effects from missing sleep. So basically, if you're a chronic insomniac, you may be experiencing some of these side effects, basically irritability, cognitive impairment, memory lapses, or even loss of memory, impaired moral judgment, decreased creativity, increased stress, and symptoms similar to ADHD, and impaired immune system, risks of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, increased testosterone, and decreased heart and rate variability, basically you are at risk of having a stroke. You're at a higher risk of having a stroke. You basically increase reaction time, or actually decreased reaction time, decreased accuracy, tremors, aches. Many people experiencing these symptoms, they don't understand why, but when they understand that their sleep has been poor for many years, they tend to basically link this together. Now, there are many studies have been done on mice, particularly about sleep, and so what they've done, they actually discovered that humans can survive 3 times longer without food than without sleep. And some other studies have been done in laboratory studies done on animals, and they actually revealed that rats who were deprived of all stages of sleep, basically all of the stages that we just mentioned previously, they tend to only survive for about 11 to 30 days, where their typical life expectancy of a mice is 2 years. Basically, you just cut their life very, very short.
Be interesting for us to find out from some of you guys, since almost 50% of you said that you do experience sleep issues. Which of those sorts of side effects do you notice? So just pop your answers in the question box so we can see them coming up. Back to you, Sveti.
Thank you. Yeah, great idea, guys. If you do, basically, if you never thought, how can that be relating to my poor sleep? So now you've got something to basically to look out for. If you're experiencing chronic pain or headaches and things like that, that may be linked to poor sleep. Now, there are so many processes in the body that are affected by our poor sleep. Now, one of them, oh, my apologies, skipped. So one of them is actually our metabolic system. Basically, chronic poor sleepers experiencing many issues with metabolic system, but one of them is disruption in hunger hormone. So what do we actually know about correlation between hunger and sleep? So what we do know is we have 2 hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. So ghrelin triggers hunger. That's a hormone that makes us feel hungry and sends us to look for food. And leptin basically turns hunger off. So after we've eaten, leptin basically comes and regulates ghrelin and tells us that we are full and to stop eating. So when
interesting, Sveti. And just last week we heard from dietitian Chris Hughes, as you know, and he shared with us some thoughts about some of the foods we can eat to keep our ghrelin and leptin levels in the right kind of place. So very interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And on a bigger scale, when you sleep poorly, your entire metabolic system is disrupted. So when we are sleep deprived, leptin and ghrelin are out of balance. So leptin is basically overproduced in our body, and leptin can no longer control ghrelin. So basically, these two are just like they fighting, with each other. So as a result, we are hungry all day and we can't get satiated. Basically, it's just not amount of food can basically give us that feeling of being full. Now, what do we know about, actually, before I go on to the next one, how many of you actually experience that when you know you slept poorly, but the next day you just crave that food and you can't get enough, you just can't feel full enough, and you tend to eat so much more during that day than if you were at the days when you slept well. So how many of you actually done it? I actually done that before too. Before my sleep was regulated, I used to do that a lot without knowing. So once you know, you basically begin to look out for these things. All right. So next, let's see
some of the things that are coming in that people are mentioning in the comments box here: brain fog, weight, headaches, low performance, depression, nausea, poor concentration, cranky, lack of concentration, restless legs, difficulty losing weight, hungry for sure, carb overload, a lot, says someone, maybe they're having multiple of those experiences, refined carbs for instant energy. So it's really interesting to hear what some of those symptoms are, isn't it, Sveti?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And oftentimes we just don't know why we have this. And, people often go to the doctor and get tests done. The tests seem normal. And instead, the doctor says, well, you don't have a problem. But people often don't know how to relate this to poor sleep because there is no such awareness at the moment. Sleep is not what's the word? Not so highly talked about, and sleep health is not basically taught to us at schools. So, all right, so let's move on to stress and sleep. What do we actually know about correlation between stress and sleep? All right, just like other hunger hormones, we have stress and pleasure hormones in the body. They're called cortisol and serotonin. So cortisol is a stress neurotransmitter and serotonin is a calming neurotransmitter. So when we are sleep deprived, cortisol and serotonin are out of balance, just like leptin and ghrelin. So basically, cortisol is our stress hormone. It's overproduced in the body. And serotonin, basically, is our like a pleasure relaxation hormone. It just can no longer control that cortisol. So as a result, we crave junk food to give us comfort. It's basically a false kind of comfort. So again, see the correlation. Now we can find both correlation between hunger and stress and sleep. It's like a vicious cycle. People get into this vicious cycle and it's very difficult to control because consciously you are absolutely unable to control this. No matter how much you're willing to do it or are motivated to do it, you are unable to control your endocrine system and your neurotransmitters in your brain. So basically, when we are tired, we crave a lot of junk food simply to give us the comforting, to release serotonin. This is why it's called comfort food. And whatever that comfort food is for you, either it's salty, sweet, and things like that. So this is why we crave comfort food, to give us comfort, to counteract high levels of cortisol in the body, but also overproduction of ghrelin in our system. All right, so now let's look at the sleep and mental health. These two are very closely related. Poor sleep affects not just our physical state, but also our mental health in many, many ways, in many crucial ways. So poor sleep and psychiatric disorders. So poor sleep may raise the risk for and even directly contribute to development of some psychiatric disorders. So, okay, so let me elaborate a little bit on that. They've done a lot of studies, a lot of research on that, and they found that chronic sleep problems affect about 50 to 80% of patients in a typical psychiatric practice. So basically, those who already had predisposition to any mental illnesses, sleep basically heightened that. Also, poor sleep. Poor sleep contributed to even higher problems with the mental health. So sleep problems are particularly common in patients with anxiety, depression, and even different hyperactivity like ADHD. So traditionally, what clinicians and specialists actually traditionally thought that psychiatric disorders, viewed insomnia just as a symptom of that. But studies in both children and adults suggested that sleep problems may raise the risk for it, the risk for developing mental illness, and basically the risk of not recovering from mental illness. And actually, some studies actually show that people who are on high blood pressure medication, those who had insomnia, the medication didn't have the same effect on them as if they slept well. All right, sorry, go back to this slide. Good sleep and resilience. So good sleep is a foundation for our mental and emotional resilience. Because without good sleep, we are unable to have that resilience mechanism activated in our brain. When we are chronically sleep deprived, that mechanism, just like metabolic system, is basically non-existent, which cannot access it. It's switched off, and it doesn't allow us to have that resilience towards the stresses around us. So good night's sleep actually helps to foster both mental and emotional resilience. So let's look at the mental health on REM. REM sleep boosts our learning and memory, and supports our mental health. So basically, those who experience more REM cycles during the night, they tend to be more resilient and tend to have more memory. They tend to be more mentally healthy. So basically, chronic sleep disruptors affect your negative thinking and your emotional vulnerability. And many studies on REM sleep actually basically report that you basically are unable to control your emotional and mental health, or even your emotions. So sleep disruption negatively affects thinking and impairs emotional regulation. It causes chaos in the brain and amplifies psychiatric disorders. All right, so sleep disruption basically affects our neurotransmitters and stress hormone, in our brain, and basically it just wrecks our brain for the next day. All right, so let's look at the depression. 65 to 90% of people with major depression experience sleep problems, and sleep problems also increase the risk of developing depression. So these two are very closely related together as well. So basically, they support each other. So if you have poor sleep, you are more prone to depression. If you have depression, you are more prone to poor sleep. So it's like a vicious cycle again. It's just very, very difficult to basically stop that vicious cycle and heal. So yes, they've done a lot of studies on children and adults. So yeah, then they actually discovered that many patients with depression have insomnia, and actually prone to developing insomnia as well. All right, poor sleep and depression. Depressed individuals are more likely to respond my apologies. Depressed individuals are likely to respond to treatment than those without sleep problems. So basically, let me elaborate on this. Those who have depression and take medication, those who don't have poor sleep, they tend to respond to medication better. They tend to feel better, and they tend to recover from depression quicker and easier. But those who have depression and on medication and they have poor sleep, they tend to basically worsen their mental health and depression, and actually sleep gets worse as well. So that basically puts them into deeper psychological distress. So they are more likely to think about suicide and die by suicide than depressed patients who are able to sleep normally. Isn't that frightening? All right, so let's move on to the poor sleep and anxiety. Anxiety is another very, very commonly suffered psychological distress, and many children and adults suffer from anxiety these days. And anxiety also could be a symptom of overthinking about the future, where depression is more thinking about too much of the past. It's just a symptom of that thinking and being so much in the past and remaining with your past pain from that you experienced in the past. So anxiety in this case is also a risk factor for developing anxiety disorder. Poor sleep is a risk factor for developing anxiety disorder. So if you are prone to anxiety and if you sleep poorly, your anxiety will be heightened, and it can worsen the symptoms of anxiety disorders and prevent recovery as well. All right, so poor sleep can be fatal. Every day in Australia, someone dies from sleep-related vehicle or industrial accidents. Basically, again, that correlation between poor concentration, falling asleep at the wheel, or falling asleep on a job, on a high kind of risk job. So basically, this is a statistical statement here that every day, this is absolutely shocking, that every day in Australia, someone dies from sleep-related vehicle or industrial accidents. So this is just to tell us how it can be fatal in this context, and very dangerous, obviously, for those who are involved in accident, those who are just basically by accidentally come across the accident and also got became a victim of that as well. So actually, poor sleep also affects our financial economy, and inadequate sleep costs Australia over $66 billion per year. It's actually over $66 billion per year. This is, I think this was 2017 statistics. I believe this year would be much higher. All right, so poor sleep, poor sleep is actually is very detrimental, as I mentioned. But now let's change to how do we get good sleep. And good sleep is fantastic for our body. Almost, some people report when they slept poorly for 20 years and now they start sleeping better, they report feeling like they are on holidays when they wake up in the morning. So good sleep improves your mental health, general well-being, workplace productivity, and many more factors in our human body, and mentally, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. So many people these days are just absolutely don't know that sleep is a third pillar of triangle of health. Unfortunately, we're not taught in this manner at in our schools or universities, so sometimes it just basically gets bypassed. People don't prioritize sleep very much for some reason, and they basically take it for granted. And many of us don't even stop to think what is actually sleep and why we need it. So, but what we do know, we know that it's a third pillar of health, along with nutrition and exercise. You see, sleep is so closely related to this, to both of nutrition and exercise. Just think about it. If you get your nutrition right and you get your exercise program right and you don't sleep well, your nutritional goals and exercise goals will not basically be met at that level that you desire, because you will struggle physically, emotionally, psychologically, and also you will not have that motivation to pursue your goals.
And it's very interesting, Sveti, because of course for everyone who's done resilience training with us, they'll remember that sleep, exercise and nutrition are the three key components of the physical pillar of resilience. And so very important. We want to find out at this point which of these habits apply to you. So which sorts of habits are you in now? Because I know that Sveti is about to start talking to us about how we can get better sleep. So we want to just capture from you guys, what is it that the habits you're in now? Are you prone to caffeine within 3 to 5 hours before bed? Do you wake up frequently during the night? Do you not get to sleep till late, whether that's logistical or because you're stressed or unable to for some other reason? Or do you not get enough sleep during the night? Just interested to get your thoughts on that. Thank you very much. I'll close that poll and we'll share the results with you shortly as Sveti goes on. Thanks, Sveti.
Thank you, Kim. Yes, so many of us, sorry about that. So, all right, so let's continue with the slide. So many of us, when we do lose our sleep, people don't know what can be done. And many of us basically turn to go to our GP, which is the right thing to do. They go to GP, they tell them they can't sleep, and very often they would get a medication. And medication is fine for a very short period of time, up to 4 weeks, for example. But it's not designed to be a long-term solution. So what happens in the medication, when you take medication, you get into this cycle, and this is the cycle of sleep medication dependence. Basically, you have insomnia, you take medication, you develop the tolerance to that particular dose of the medication or to that particular medication, and you tend to increase the dose, and because of you increase the dose because it decreased the effectiveness, and you increase the dose, you develop another tolerance to that dose now, and then you tend to get into this cycle of you losing sleep, increase the dose, get sleep, get bigger dose, and a lot of people tend to get stuck in this cycle for many years without basically a proper good night's sleep. All right, so insomnia is very treatable. It's not a sleep disorder. When you first develop insomnia, it could be chronic or it could be acute, basically just short-term insomnia. But eventually, if it's not treated correctly and if it's left there for a long time, insomnia can turn into a sleep disorder. Okay, well, let's now talk about how to sleep good. How do we actually get that good night's sleep? So, first of all, good night's sleep begins with good habits at home. And how do we actually establish those habits? To establish those habits, we need to establish a few systems at home, because those systems will help us support our good habits for sleep. So if we don't have the systems, we have to rely on our motivation. And motivation is, we can only rely on motivation about, I don't know, up to 9%. Okay, but the rest is based on our systems. We live in the world of systems. See, the government, the law, Medicare, everything is a system, and we're so unconsciously used to it that we don't even think about it. We just know, and it becomes such known factor to us that we don't even have to think or doubt it. This is why establishing great systems at home will support your great routine for your sleeping. The same way goes for your nutrition and for your exercise. All right, so where can we start? What we can start is establishing sleep hygiene or pre-sleep routine. Many of you might have heard about sleep hygiene. And what is sleep hygiene? It's basically things that you do during the evening before you go to sleep. But you can also call it pre-sleep routine or your nighttime routine. So it's just a variation in terminology. So when I work with people, I give them this kind of easy way to understand, when does your sleep routine actually begin? Well, to understand it easier, you can simply begin it when the sun is down. So when the sun goes down, your sleep routine begins. You don't necessarily have to go to sleep at that time, but you can begin doing things and slowing down your brain, your body, in order for us to get into that state of relaxation, because it can take us up to 90 minutes or even longer to relax from being very active to being fully relaxed to be able to fall asleep. So since the sun is down, you start implementing your nighttime routine. Now we need to schedule relaxation. So basically, what gets scheduled gets done. So once you schedule that time for relaxation, it doesn't have to be particular meditation or listening to particular things. Your relaxation could be your own way to relax. It could be drinking a cup of tea, it could be reading a book, it could be watching your favorite movie. Just when you do watch TV, you gotta be very mindful of that exposure to blue light. Either you get blue blocker glasses or you create that distance between you and the device and that blue light projecting screen and things like that. So you need to find your own relaxation and switch on the slow motion mode. When I say this to my clients, they love this. Basically, literally slow motion mode. Stop running around like crazy, like we all do during the day to get things done. Basically, literally slow motion. Walk slower, talk slower, do things slower. If you don't get everything done, it doesn't matter. You'll still be there tomorrow. Now, separate work from home. It's very difficult to do for many people, I agree. And it's for me as well sometimes. We tend to be very busy these days, but being mindful of that. Or you can actually, if you can't separate your work and home completely, what you can do, you can partially separate it. Basically, emotionally separate from it. You can still do the tasks, for example, if you need them done, but you emotionally aren't stressed about it. All right, so let's talk more about the sleep hygiene. So after the sun is down, what do we do? So what we can do, very simple things. And as a general rule, once you start living by this rule, this becomes habit. So basically turn down the lights. the sound, smells, activities, and your food at home. What does this all mean? Basically, turning off the big lights, the fluorescent lights. Invest in your, like, just a night lamps, or salt lamps, something that's a bit lower than very bright, so your eyes aren't exposed to that very strong blue light, because that disrupts the production of melatonin. And we need melatonin at least an hour before bed to give us that relaxation and that signal for the brain to go to sleep and fall asleep. So turn down the sound. If you're used to listening to TV loud, to radio, to music, or talking loudly in the house, turn that down. Just like you can turn TV down on remote, turn everything down to the very lower kind of sound. The smell, very strong smells, tend to aggravate our nervous system and also can trigger that fight or flight response in our brain and tend to keep us awake. Some people, they can't understand why they can't sleep. They do everything right, but they've got those artificial, there's air fresheners plugged into the wall, or the spray, or the artificial candles. Once they get rid of those, they find that they can sleep well and they can sleep better. And turn down your activities. For example, don't exercise vigorously during the evening. If, for example, you used to go to gym and used to go for a run and do really strenuous exercises, when the sun's down, do something easier. Don't run as fast. Don't tend to go to gym for longer period, like for over an hour or so. Find activities like still physical if you prefer that, but just a little bit turned down. For example, yoga or walk, or things like that. And your food. Don't have very spicy dinner, or very late dinner, or very basically protein concentrated dinner, like animal protein. Have a lighter dinner, because your digestive system will keep you awake to digest the food, because when you are asleep, your digestive system is also asleep. Now, I find that hot shower bath also is very relaxing, simply because when we artificially warm our body in the hot shower bath, once we finish the bath or shower, the body begins to cool down. And once it begins to cool down, it sends that signal to the brain to get ready for bed, because the body temperature is lowering, ready to sleep. And drink herbal tea or golden milk. We do know what golden milk is. Basically, a warm milk mixed with the spices such as cinnamon, turmeric, and some honey. It's basically from ancient Indian philosophy. All right, sleep hygiene. When you are in bed, make sure your bedroom is made just for sleeping. Remove all the TV, all the devices from your bedroom. Remove all the smells from your bedrooms, unless they're natural essential oils, and make sure they are natural, not synthetically made, because that could again aggravate your nervous system. And you can only do 3 things in bed: sleep, make love, and read my book. So, or find a book that you like, or a book that's boring, because that book will switch off your brain and make you sleepy. And also keep, this is very important too, keep all the arguments outside the bedroom. When it comes to children, settling children, never use their bedroom for a place of punishment, because psychologically they will have that association, and they will not be able to relax in their bedroom to go to sleep. They might even develop anxiety. So keep everything out of the bedroom. Keep it nice and clean, beautifully organized, relaxing to the eye, and very, very quiet. All right, what to avoid? We need to avoid loud music, bright lights, big, late, concentrated dinner, alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, all the fun things. We've got to avoid them to get our good night's sleep back. Avoid negativity, all kinds of negativity, simply because having a lot of negativity could also put you into fight or flight response, can switch on that response in the brain for anxiety or depression, and basically will not allow your brain to switch off. and avoid anything that is stimulating or energizing. Okay, what do we do? What's best to do to get good night's sleep? Establish a time that you need to go to sleep every night. For example, you go to bed at 10 p.m. and you wake up at 6 a.m. That's 8 hours of sleep. And you wake up and you go to sleep at the same time, even during the weekends as well. First thing, when you do wake up, go look at the sun. That bright light from the sun will set your circadian rhythm to the point where it will tell it that it is morning, it's time to wake up, and let's function from this moment on for our basically daily activities. Okay, and when we do, before you go to bed, go and stand for a minute or a couple of minutes on the grass with bare feet in the moonlight. Okay, that will tell your brain that it's time for sleep. Okay, what I find very useful as well, practice gratitude. I call it grateful your way to sleep. When I give these exercises to some of my clients, they said, I have never slept better. I just felt so grateful for everything. Even find the smallest thing during the day that you are grateful for and concentrate on that thing rather than that chatter in your mind. Oftentimes it's very difficult to switch off the chatter in our brain simply because the brain is so overactive and overexposed to so much stimuli during the day. But if you get your brain to concentrate on one small thing that you're grateful for during the day, it will allow your brain to tell you that it's okay, nothing to worry about, you can now sleep. And also smiling lots. I find that people who smile a lot, they tend to be happier, they tend to sleep better, they tend to live longer, and it also helps them sleep better. And also you need to love your bed. When you're lying in bed, you need to literally love it. Physically, emotionally, mentally, however you can, just love your bed. Lie down and just feel how your bed loves you and you love your bed. And refuse to do work. It will still be there tomorrow. If you haven't finished all the house chores, leave them. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there the next day. So just simply leave them, just so you can have more time to relax. And hot shower, bath, meditation, or quiet time. When I say meditation, a lot of people get scared because they say, oh, I don't know how to meditate. That takes hours. I don't have that time. And now they start stressing about an extra thing, which is meditation. So if you don't see meditation such as another task or another chore, you can actually use meditation just as a couple of minutes sitting very quietly. In a quiet place, you can listen to music very quietly, or just simply close your eyes and sit there for a couple of minutes. That is also meditation. So that's all from me today. And just remember, the world is yours. Conquer it.
Thank you so much, Sveti. And while Sveti is just handing back the reins so I can flick through the last slides for you, I'll invite you at this point to just pop any questions you might have specific to your issues. And I see a lot of you mentioned the reasons why you have trouble sleeping. So if any of you have specific questions for Sveti, then please go ahead and just ask those questions now, and we'll get her to answer them at the end of the session. I'm just going to flick through some of Sveti's slides so that we can get right to the very end. So interesting, of course, Sveti mentioned the challenges associated with working from home, and I had to have a little giggle because I've been periodically muting my own voice during this session because I am working from home today. I have a broken foot and my 4-year-old has croup. And it's just he and I at home this week, so a bit of a challenge. So I've been recognizing some of those signs and symptoms that Sveti was talking about at the same time as trying to manage some of those stressful circumstances in the background. So very great to hear some of those tips. I love the idea of smiling more and using gratitude. And many of you who've been on these webinars with me this month will know that in the last couple of weeks I've been practicing gratitude journaling, and I have found that it has been really beneficial in helping me sleep well. I think just partly because of just focusing on what's important and what matters rather than what doesn't. Okay, so just to finish up, for the very many of you who probably thought that was fantastic, Karen's a bit worried about the mozzies when she's barefoot and looking at the moon. That's funny. Mozzies, hate them. Okay, so for the very many of you who might like some more information on Sveti, there is the address for her website where you can contact her. You can also, of course, schedule an appointment with her directly, and I've put her calendar in there for you should you wish to do that. So definitely I encourage you to do that. Also, just to let you know, anyone who joins our webinar program, and you guys will get some information about that in the next week or two, I think, will receive her book for free as part of that. So that is part of our online resilience program. So if you're interested in looking at how to build resilience over time, that's a great way to do it. Or you can also purchase her book one-off on her website. Of course, like all things associated with taking care of our self-care and our personal health better to contribute to culture, it takes time. So it takes time for us to build the muscle and practice the habits that are going to make a difference. And all of these little things come together to create a better working environment, because really, as we always talk about, what is culture other than the sum total of our relationships and our interactions and interpretations with people that we work with? If you've forgotten or don't know, we on average spend 90,000 hours now in our lifetime at work. So really valuable to figure out how that can become a more fulfilling experience. Just a reminder of our framework there. If you'd like any more information on that, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And of course, the 3 rules that we always like to leave you with to help build positive culture. You do have influence. We all make a mark everywhere we go every day. And what kind of mark you make is really up to you. We are what we do repeatedly. And it's most often, particularly when we talk about workplaces and culture, it's the little things done by lots of people that create the biggest change, not the big sweeping issues. And of course, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I just invite you to download the tips and tool sheets that we've left there, and join us over on the Facebook group if you haven't already. We're going to start posting some little videos, and hopefully Sveti will join in on that with us and give us some tips and ideas that we can use to help people sleep better and build their resilience. Okay, we'll take a couple of moments just to answer some questions. If you have to go, thank you so much for being here. And please do take a moment to just answer the evaluation that pops up at the end of this webinar or in the follow-up email. We really appreciate if you can let us know what's working and not working with these webinars. Okay, Sveti, so I have a question for you here. What do you recommend to help with going off antidepressants, which are primarily used for sleeping patterns? Sveti, can you give us any information about that?
Hi, Kim. Yes, of course. I don't have that specific training in recommending medication or not. It's outside of my scope of practice. However, I do know that many people tend to successfully get off medication. They begin implementing the routine at home, and that tend to support their decision of getting off the medication and establishing that better relaxation at home, better mindset, better state of mind, and it increases their positivity in day-to-day life. So if you want to work with your GP and ask them for the plan, to establish a plan for you how to get off the antidepressant medication, whoever prescribed them to you, or do your own research, how you can successfully very slowly and safely get off the medication, you can actually at the same time start implementing things, because the things that you implement at home, complementary medicine, will support that decision and give you better results.
And just probably for the person who did ask that question, I just want to share that someone else has left a comment here to say, I'm a customer of Sveti and she's been really helpful, especially getting me off my reliance of sleep drugs. So it might be worth you reaching out to Sveti and seeing if a consultation with her can help with that. Okay, we're out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I will end the webinar now, but thank you, Sveti, for being with us, and thank you all for joining us today. Such a valuable session, as several people have said. Thank you so much. Please take a moment to complete the evaluation for us and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.